Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the effects of stress on your immune system. Most importantly, the chemicals of fight or flight and how they affect your immune system. So in the summer of 2016, I completed the Ironman 70.3. And for those that don't know what that is, I did the duathlon portion. So those that don't know what that is, it's usually a triathlon, which is swim, bike, run. But I did the duathlon portion, which was run, bike, run. So it was a 5 kilometer run to start, 90 kilometer-ish bike. And then we did a 21 kilometer half marathon to end the race. And that race, I think I finished in about 6 hours, 20 minutes, but that's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is I did that in the July of 2016, and by February of the next year, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue. So I went from training, running 21 kilometers a day some days, riding the bike for 80 kilometers, sometimes doing a little bit of both together, to having no energy to function throughout the day. I mean, I would wake up after 10 hours of sleep, and every 15 minutes I would have to take a nap, like a half an hour nap. I would be curled up in front of my fireplace because I was shivering cold. And the only energy I could muster up was to just take a walk around the block. So my exercise went from a really high level to not having enough energy to go around the block. And literally that was my exercise. So around 4 in the afternoon, I would go out, do a walk around the block, come home, shower, and come home and eat dinner. So what did I learn through that? I learned a lot. It was a really hard time to go through, but what I learned was there's several stresses that can impact your fight or flight response system. It's not just emotional stress, but there's physical stress. So I was overtraining. There's food stress. So a lot of us have food, I guess we're not all foods react well to our bodies, and we don't really know that. We just sort of chalk it up to I'm bloated, I don't feel good after I ate that, but that's really your body saying don't eat any more of that. Some of the times. Anyways, you can do a blood test to figure that out. The other thing was stimulant stress, so coffee, alcohol, sugar, any of that stuff will definitely fire up your adrenals and your fight or flight response, and then emotional stress as well. So today we're going to focus on emotional stress and really the effect of cortisol, because there's a few chemicals in the stress response, but it's really cortisol. So let's go. Let's start with what is the immune system. A lot of us know what the immune system is, right? It protects us from viruses and bacteria and things like that. But it's really a complex system, and it's made up of billions of cells that are inside your bloodstream, right? And they act as guards. So if there's bad bacteria or fungus or any sort of intruder that the body doesn't like, viral infections like COVID-19, it fights them off, right? It takes them and it kills them so that you can maintain living a healthy life. Now, what is the effect of the stress response on this system? So when your body goes into fight or flight, there are 3 main chemicals that are released. Let's see if I can say the first one. I always screw this one up, but it's norepinephrine. I can never say that. And then there's cortisol, and then there's adrenaline, right? So we're going to focus a little bit on cortisol and what happens when you have too much cortisol in the body. Now, a lot of people think of cortisol, and I used to do the same before I went through chronic fatigue. I didn't realize this until I went through that I used to think cortisol stress. So cortisol is bad. We don't want it. It's no good. But that's not true. Actually, your cortisol, it's important. It's critical to live. You need cortisol to actually live. So when you wake up, your adrenals pump some cortisol through your body, and then that cortisol has receptors in many different cells, like tons of cells. And it's vital to regulating and controlling many things like your metabolism, salt and water balance, memory formation, influencing blood pressure, and being an anti-inflammatory. So it's a vital chemical that your body needs, but only in the right amount, right? So it's when it has too much cortisol in the bloodstream where it becomes an issue, and we'll sort of talk about that. There's 2 different things the immune system does depending on the length of the stress response. So if you have a short-term stress response, meaning a few seconds to a few hours, then the the immune system actually decreases inflammation and it stimulates the immune system, so it becomes stronger with a short-term response. So short-term would be, let's say you're walking down the street, it's a beautiful sunny day, you're whistling, just enjoying the summer day, and then out of nowhere, a Rottweiler comes charging at you from someone's backyard barking, and all of a sudden your body's in fight or flight. It's got all these chemicals rushing through you. The owner comes from behind the backyard. She calls Daisy over and apologizes, and off you go on your way. So obviously after a short time, your body's chemicals would go back to normal, the stress is gone, the stressor is gone, and you carry on with your day. Now, the problem again, and I said this in my last video, it's not short-term stress, it's obviously the long-term and prolonged stress. And in today's society, there's a lot of articles that say our society, especially in the Western world, we're in more stress, we're under more stress than we've ever been before. And I think it has to do because of all the things I talked about earlier about food stress. We're not eating right. We put emotional stress on ourselves. We've got stimulant. We start our days with coffees and caffeine and power drinks to get us through the day. All that is contributing to your stress hormones and keeping them coursing through your body. So what happens when you have stress is you already have cortisol going through your body, right? In a nice balanced environment. But when you have the stressors going that are compounding all of this through your day, let's say you're fighting with a coworker, you don't like your boss, you're getting cut off in traffic, or you're stuck in traffic, you are stressed about a project, all sorts of things, deadlines, you don't have enough money, you're thinking about your finance, all these things compound your emotional stress. And when you're under all this emotional stress, your body you're not even going to really feel it. It's not like you're really anxious. You may not even feel it, but your body has these enhanced levels of chemicals that aren't good, like cortisol. And so let's say, for example, right now, if I just said to you, just relax your shoulders. Sometimes we don't realize it, but we spend our days with our shoulders hunched because our body's in a little bit of a stress state, right? So we're under this emotional stress, and when we have increased levels of cortisol, what happens in the blood is our white blood cells, or our immune system, kind of gets out of the way because there's more of a danger present, and making sure a bacteria or a virus doesn't get in isn't priority anymore. It's this ever and clear immediate threat. That is what's important to the body, and it knows that because there's excess cortisol in the blood. So the immune system goes, okay, well, I'm going to take a back seat because it's more important for me to protect myself from this lion or tiger, because that means death, life or death, rather than just getting sick. So we may get sick, but let's save our life. So that's really what happens in the blood with cortisol. And if you think about it from if you have cortisol in your blood for a long time, your immune system is really, really downregulated, and that means that you're really more prone to getting sick and not being able to fight off infections. And obviously, in a time like today with COVID-19, you want your immune system to be as strong as possible. So there's actually a study done by Janice Kikolt-Glaser, and she took 75 medical students aged 23, and she did a blood test, and she measured their NK cells, which they call natural killer cells, a type of white blood cell that's part of the immune system. And she noticed that a lot of the students had decreased NK cells. So meaning they had a little bit of increased cortisol. They were 1 month away from studying writing their exams. Now, 1 month out, is it really the exam that's affecting that stress? Who knows? But really, she wanted to get sort of a baseline. And then she took a second sample the week of the exam. So all the students had written at least 2 exams, and they were still preparing for other exams that week. And when she took the blood sample, she noticed every student had decreased levels of the NK cells. Significantly decreased levels of NK cells. So elevation of cortisol, decrease in natural killer cells, meaning the immune system was downregulated or not as strong. The other thing she did was she did an emotional sort of a behavioral test with the students before she took the blood test. And she focused on two things. Kind of how many of these kids had, or young adults had, really some stressors that may impact their NK cells in the past year. So she would ask them targeted questions in this survey. And then she also targeted the survey to loneliness. So she would ask interpersonal relationship questions to find out which of them were more, I guess, lonely. And she found that the ones that scored higher on the loneliness, so they were a lot more lonely, had fewer interpersonal relationships, and the ones that had more stressors in their lives had even more decreased levels of NK cells in their system, right? So it sort of confirmed the fact that stress, just emotional stress alone, can have an impact on your immune system. So what can we do? Well, in the case of the students, they were 23 years old. Now think of as you age, the immune system also gets a little bit weaker. It's not as strong. It's not as efficient. So it's even more important to make sure that we're not as stressed and that we're eating right and doing all the right things so that our immune systems can be strong. Now, what can you do to decrease these stress levels? Number one is don't rush around. Now, I'm saying this because this was really typical of me, is everywhere I go, I rush. I'm always going fast, and I walk fast when I'm walking somewhere. I'm driving like I need to get somewhere in a certain amount of time. And so when you're in that rush state, you're in a fight or flight stress state. So what you want to do is when you're feeling that you're rushing, just take a breath, come back to your breathing, focus on your breathing, because what that does is it brings you to the present moment, and then just tell yourself to slow down consciously, because you're unconsciously running around, rushing around. You may be unconsciously, so you really want to slow down. The other thing you can do is yoga and meditation. I mean, I've been doing yoga for over two decades, and it's been phenomenal for my anxiety and stress levels. But meditation's really been a game changer. I mean, it is a game changer. It really is. I've only been doing it for a couple of years, really just in the last 6 months on a regular basis. And it has made, and it's had a dramatic effect on my well-being and outlook. And that's because I'll do more videos on, I may even do a yoga class and a meditation class, but I'll do more videos on the benefits of meditation. But it really is upgrading your brain and your old wiring that we have from our cave-dwelling ancestors. So if you're not into yoga or meditation and you think that it's all kind of woohoo, I get that, because I used to think that many years ago meditation wasn't for me. But if you are thinking that, you can do just a few simple things during the day, like 3 times a day. Just sit down and do some slow breathing, deep breathing. So belly breathing, put your hand on your belly, inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4. Do that over and over for a few minutes, and you'll find your body come into more of a parasympathetic state. So in a more relaxed environment. If you do that a few times a day, it'll start to teach your body that you're in a relaxed environment. There's no threats around. And the other thing you can do if you want to enhance this is you tell yourself consciously to relax your shoulders. You know, you can just do this in your head. Just say, like, relax your eyes, relax your jaw, relax your arms, relax your legs, and relax your feet. Everything. Relax your entire body. Consciously do that. And what that's doing is that's signaling the body and the brain to say, well, we're relaxed, so we're not in any immediate threat or danger, and so let's turn off the fight or flight system, let's go into parasympathetic state, and let's just become a little bit more balanced. And again, if you've been stressed or anxious for a long time, these exercises will help, but it's going to take time for your body to get back into, kind of like when I was going through my chronic fatigue. It's not just like I started doing meditation, yoga, and boom, I was back. No. I had to rebuild my body. It took me 2 years to get out of chronic fatigue. I mean, it was a slow process. I started to get my energy back slowly, but it really is, you know, depending on how bad, I had really burnt myself out. So there's different degrees, right? You may just be a little bit stressed, a little bit anxious, and so you'll get back to a more balanced state quicker. If you're burnt out like I was, then it's going to take some time, but it's focus activities like this that are really going to help you in the long run. So hope that helps. I know that in this day and age, having a strong immune system is important. The other thing that you may want to look at is, again, I said this in my last video, is like, don't look at the news a lot because that adds to your stress levels. So focus on more positive news, things that are good. There's actually a site called goodnews.com, and they will talk about positive things that are happening with COVID-19 or anything in society, so that you don't have that negativity, negative stress that's impacting your negativity bias and confirmation bias. So hope that helped, and thanks for watching.